"Hey, janitor man." The voice cut through the gym like a whip crack. Marcus Ghost Williams looked up from his mop to see Tyler the Hurricane Hayes bouncing on his toes near the main ring, his perfectly sculpted physique gleaming under the fluorescent lights of Miami's most exclusive training facility. At 23, Tyler was everything the boxing world loved, undefeated in 31 amateur bouts, with the kind of pretty boy looks that made sponsors throw money at him. Marcus, at 45, had been working as a janitor at Iron Temple Boxing for the past 8 months. His 6'2" frame still carried the subtle power of someone who had once commanded respect in very different arenas. But tonight, like every night, he was invisible. Just another black man in maintenance coveralls cleaning up after people who would never notice him. The gym should have been empty at 11 o'clock on this humid Thursday night, but Tyler's training session had run late. Before diving in, let me know where you are tuning in from today. I love to know how far this story travels. Now let's get back to the story. "You see me working here?" Tyler called out, shadowboxing with exaggerated movements. "This is what real dedication looks like. But you never seen anything like this before, right?" Marcus continued mopping, his jaw tight. 8 months. 8 months since the accident that took everything from him. 8 months since he'd walked away from a career that had defined him for 2 decades. 8 months of swallowing his pride every single night. "I'm talking to you." Tyler's voice grew sharper. Behind him, his usual crew of hangers-on laughed on cue. Can't even get basic respect from the help these days. The mop stopped moving. Marcus slowly raised his head, and for just a moment, something flickered in his dark eyes that made Tyler's bravado falter slightly, but the moment passed. "Sorry, sir," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying a gravity that seemed too heavy for a janitor. "Just trying to finish up so you can train in peace." Tyler's grin widened. This was perfect. No, don't be sorry. I got an idea." He turned to address his small audience. "Check this out, everyone. See this?" Tyler gestured toward Marcus while addressing his gathered friends. "This is exactly what I've been talking about. The difference between those who chase greatness and those who clean up after greatness." Marcus felt the familiar burn in his chest. The same feeling he'd experienced in grimy gyms from Detroit to Las Vegas when promoters would make comments about urban fighters and knowing their place. But that was before. Before he'd proven them all wrong. Before the accident. Before he'd lost everything that mattered. "What do you say, janitor man?" Tyler continued, his voice dripping with manufactured drama. "Want to show these folks what happens when someone who's never thrown a real punch steps in with a champion." Marcus set down his mop and bucket. When he straightened up, something in his posture shifted. Shoulders squaring, weight distributing perfectly across both feet. It was subtle, but to anyone who knew what to look for, it was like watching a sleeping lion open its eyes. "Son," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying an undertone that made Tyler's entourage exchange glances. "You really want to do this?" The word "son" hit Tyler like a slap. At 23, with a perfect record and endorsement deals, he wasn't anyone's son. Especially not some janitors. "Did this man just call me son?" Tyler laughed, but there was an edge to it now. "You hear this? Old man thinks he's about to teach me something." That's when Sofia Martinez stepped into the gym. At 19, she was the youngest licensed boxing trainer in Florida, working the night shift to pay for law school. She'd been watching from the office, and something about the interaction felt wrong. "Tyler," she called out, her voice cutting through the testosterone-thick air. "Maybe we should just stick to the training session we planned." Tyler spun around, his face flushed with annoyance. "Sophie, please. I'm creating something special here." He turned back to Marcus, his voice rising for dramatic effect. "Unless Pops here is too scared to show these kids what happens when fantasy meets reality." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Behind his lids, he saw the same scene that haunted him every night, the accident 8 months ago. The young fighter, barely 20 years old, collapsing in the ring after what should have been a routine sparring session. The sound of the kid's head hitting the canvas. The silence that followed. The way the kid's mother looked at him in the hospital corridor. "I don't fight anymore," Marcus said simply. "Of course you don't." Tyler's voice cracked with excitement. "Because you never did. Look at this guy. Probably never thrown a punch in his life outside of maybe some street fight, right?" The racial undertone wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Sophia's face hardened. Two of Tyler's crew members looked uncomfortable. Marcus opened his eyes. When his gaze met Tyler's, the younger man felt something primal and uncomfortable crawl up his spine. "You know what?" Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper, but somehow carrying to every corner of the gym. "Maybe it's time someone taught you what respect looks like." Tyler's hands were already wrapped, his custom hurricane haze gloves gleaming under the lights. Marcus stood in the opposite corner of the ring, having reluctantly agreed to put on spare gloves after Tyler's increasingly aggressive taunts. "This is happening." Tyler bounced on his toes, playing to his small audience. "You're all about to get a free lesson in levels to this game." Sophia watched with growing concern. Something about the janitor's movements didn't add up. The way he'd climbed through the ropes, fluid, natural, like he'd done it thousands of times. The way he stood now in the corner, not tense or nervous, but perfectly balanced and calm. "Tyler," she said quietly, "maybe we should—" "Sophie, please." Tyler cut her off. "This is gold. My manager's going to love this." He turned to Marcus, raising his voice. "Hope you got good insurance, Pops, because class is about to be in session." Marcus said nothing. He simply raised his gloves in a basic guard position. But something about the way he held them made Sophia pull out her phone and quickly search something. Tyler came out aggressive, throwing a quick jab-cross combination meant to end things fast and dramatically. It was technically sound, the kind of combination that had earned him highlight reels and endorsement deals. Marcus moved his head exactly 2 inches to the right. The punches whistled past his ear, missing by the smallest margin possible. Tyler, expecting impact, found himself off balance as his momentum carried him forward into empty air. "Lucky," Tyler muttered, resetting his stance. The second combination was faster, more precise. A jab to set up distance, followed by a hook aimed at Marcus's temple. Tyler had knocked out 3 opponents with this exact sequence. Marcus dipped under the hook like he was dodging raindrops. This time, Tyler's recovery wasn't as clean. His footwork, perfect against stationary heavy bags and compliant sparring partners, faltered against someone who moved like water. "Stay still." Tyler snapped, his perfect composure cracking slightly. That's when Marcus did something that changed everything. He smiled, not mockingly or aggressively, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had been exactly where Tyler was standing many years and many lessons ago. "Son," Marcus said gently, his gloves still in perfect defensive position, "you're telegraphing every punch with your right shoulder. Drop it 1/2 inch and your opponents won't see the cross coming." The gym fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of Miami traffic. Tyler's mouth fell open. This wasn't trash talk or intimidation. This was coaching. "What did you just say?" Tyler whispered. Sophia's search had finally loaded. Her face went white as she stared at her phone screen. "Oh my God. Your jab's got good speed," Marcus continued, still moving with that effortless defensive flow. "But you're dropping your left hand when you throw the right. Leaves you open to counters." Tyler threw another combination, this one wild with frustration. Marcus slipped every punch with minimal movement, like he was reading Tyler's intentions before Tyler himself knew what he was going to throw. "This is impossible," Tyler panted, his perfect hair now damp with sweat. Sophia stepped closer to the ring, her voice shaking. "Tyler, stop. Stop right now." "What?" Tyler spun toward her, his composure completely shattered. Sophia held up her phone, the screen displaying a search result with a black and white photo of a young boxer in championship pose. "That's Marcus 'Ghost' Williams," she said, her voice barely audible. Former World Boxing Council and International Boxing Federation heavyweight champion. Defended his title 12 times. Retired 8 months ago after a sparring accident that left a young fighter in a coma. The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and then a dawning horror as the reality of what he'd done sank in. Marcus slowly removed his gloves, his movements deliberate and tired. "I told you," he said quietly. "I don't fight anymore." Tyler stood frozen in the center of the ring, his perfect world crumbling around him. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. "You're Marcus Williams," Tyler stammered. "The Ghost. You knocked out Roberto Iron Jaw Martinez. You went 12 rounds with Tommy the Tank Thompson when you had a broken rib." Marcus climbed out of the ring with the same fluid grace he'd entered it. "That was a long time ago. But you're a legend." Tyler's voice cracked with disbelief. "I grew up watching your fights. My dad had all your pay-per-views." The Martinez knockout was the first boxing match I ever saw. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Tyler had spent the last hour humiliating his childhood hero. Sophia stepped forward. "Mr. Williams, I'm so sorry. If I had recognized you, would it have mattered?" Marcus interrupted gently. "Would you have treated me with respect because of who I used to be? Or should respect be something every person deserves, regardless of their job or their past?" The question hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished flame. Tyler sank onto a bench, his head in his hands. The reality of what he'd done was crushing him. "I messed up," he whispered. "I messed up so bad." "Language," Marcus said automatically, then caught himself and smiled slightly. "Sorry, old habit. My daughter always hated when I cursed." "You have a daughter?" Sophia asked softly. Marcus's expression darkened. "Had. Lost her in a car accident 2 years ago. Drunk driver." He paused, his voice becoming distant. "That's when the fighting stopped meaning anything. Started fighting angry instead of smart. 8 months ago, I hurt a kid in sparring because I wasn't in control. Put him in a coma for 3 weeks. Tyler looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "Is that why you retired?" "The sparring accident?" Marcus nodded. "Kid was about your age. Reminded me of myself when I was coming up. Hungry, talented, maybe a little too eager to prove himself." He looked directly at Tyler. "I saw that anger in you tonight. That need to prove you're better than someone else instead of being better than you were yesterday." "I was just showing off," Tyler said weakly. "No," Marcus replied firmly. "You were creating a hierarchy where you got to be on top by putting someone else on the bottom. That's not entertainment. That's just bullying with better lighting." Sophia had been quiet, but now she stepped forward. "Mr. Williams, that sparring accident, it wasn't your fault. I read the investigation report for a class on sports safety. The kid had an undiagnosed brain condition. It could have happened in any gym, with any partner." Marcus shook his head. "Doesn't matter. I was the one in there with him. I was supposed to protect him, and I failed. Just like Tyler was supposed to protect the culture of this gym tonight. And he failed," Sophia said pointedly, looking at Tyler. "The question is, what are you both going to do about it?" What had started as typical young man's bravado had become something unprecedented. A masterclass in humility, respect, and the weight of true talent. "I need to apologize," Tyler said, standing up from the bench. "Not just to you, Mr. Williams, but to everyone here. To Sophia. To anyone who ever works a job that society looks down on." Marcus watched as Tyler struggled to find words that could adequately address what had happened. "This man," Tyler continued, gesturing toward Marcus, "is Marcus Ghost Williams. He's a former heavyweight champion who I just spent an hour disrespecting because I thought his job made him less than me. I was wrong. I was stupid. And I was cruel." Tyler saw his reflection in the gym's mirrors and shook his head. "Everyone needs to see this. Everyone needs to see what happens when you judge people by their circumstances instead of their character." Marcus walked over to his mop and bucket, preparing to finish his work. "Tyler." "Yes, sir? You want some real advice?" From someone who's been where you are, Tyler nodded eagerly. Success without humility is just failure waiting to happen. I won titles, made millions, got respect from the best fighters in the world. But I lost it all because I forgot that none of that makes you better than anyone else. It just makes you luckier. Sophia had been quiet, but now she stepped forward with an idea that would change everything. Mr. Williams, I know you retired, but would you consider coaching? Not professional fighters, but young people who need to learn what Tyler just learned. Marcus paused, his hand on the mop handle. I don't know if I'm the right person for that anymore. You are, Tyler said suddenly. Mr. Williams, I'll pay for the gym time. We could teach kids that real strength comes from respect, not just physical power. Marcus looked around the gym. The same space where he'd been invisible an hour ago, now the center of a conversation about respect and redemption. What about your career, your sponsorships? Tyler laughed, but it wasn't his usual performative laughter. It was real, tinged with irony and hard-earned wisdom. Mr. Williams, after tonight, my career is either over or just beginning. Depends on whether people respect authenticity more than they respect arrogance. Something had shifted in the room. What started as a confrontation had become a collaboration. 3 months later, the story had spread through the boxing community like wildfire. It had spawned countless discussions about respect in athletics, and Tyler had used his platform to promote youth boxing programs. Ghost's Corner wasn't a traditional gym. Located in a renovated warehouse in Liberty City, it combined boxing training with mentorship, conflict resolution, and community service. Marcus had come out of retirement, not as a fighter, but as something more important, a teacher. Tyler had lost 2 major sponsorships, but gained something more valuable, credibility. Instead of showcasing wealth and dominance, he now documented his training under Marcus, his volunteer work with at-risk youth, and his journey from arrogance to authenticity. Today we're working with some kids from the Boys and Girls Club, Tyler announced as he set up equipment in the gym. Mr. Williams is going to teach them something I had to learn the hard way, that respect isn't something you demand, it's something you earn. Sophia had finished her law degree early and now served as the program's coordinator, using her legal education to help kids navigate the system while her boxing knowledge helped them navigate the ring. The kids, ranging from 12 to 17, filed into the gym with the cautious energy of young people who had been let down by adults before. Marcus stood in the center of the space, no longer invisible in maintenance coveralls, but commanding in simple training gear. Before we touch a glove or step in a ring, Marcus announced, everyone in this room is going to learn the most important rule. We respect each other. Not because of where we come from, what we look like, or what our parents do for work, but because we're all here trying to be better than we were yesterday. One of the kids, a 15-year-old named Jamal, raised his hand. Mr. Williams, is it true you beat Roberto Martinez with a broken hand? Marcus smiled. I did. But you want to know what I'm more proud of? I helped Roberto train for his comeback fight 2 years later. Turned out, beating someone and building someone up take completely different kinds of strength. Tyler watched from the side, no longer seeking personal glory but documenting something more important, showing people that true strength looked nothing like what he'd thought it was. As the session continued, with Marcus patiently teaching basic combinations while emphasizing respect and self-control, Tyler reflected on how much his life had changed. The confrontation had cost him some money and some fake friendships, but it had given him something priceless: authenticity. His phone buzzed with a text from his manager. Knockout Energy wants you back. They said the authenticity angle is testing well. We can triple your original deal. Tyler looked at the message, then at Marcus patiently correcting a young girl's stance while building up her confidence. He typed back, only if they sponsor the youth program too. And I want Marcus featured in the campaign as the real champion. As the sun set over Miami, casting long shadows through the warehouse windows, something beautiful was happening. A legend who had lost his way was finding purpose again. A young man who had confused attention with respect was learning what real influence looked like. And a new generation was learning that true strength came not from putting others down, but from lifting them up. The confrontation that started as a moment of cruelty had become a blueprint for redemption. Sometimes the most powerful victories happen outside the ring, in the quiet moments when respect replaces arrogance and wisdom replaces ego. One year after the confrontation that changed everything, Marcus stood in the corner of a regulation boxing ring, but not as a fighter. Across from him, Tyler was preparing for his first professional bout. Not against an overmatched opponent for show, but against a legitimate contender who had agreed to the fight specifically because of Tyler's transformation. "Remember what we worked on," Marcus said quietly, adjusting Tyler's mouthpiece. "This isn't about proving you're better than him. This is about proving you're better than the person you were a year ago." Tyler nodded, his nervous energy now focused and purposeful rather than manic and performative. The arena was packed, but not with the usual influencer crowd. These were real boxing fans who had come to see if Tyler's transformation was genuine or just another performance. In the audience, Sophia sat with 24 kids from Ghost's Corner, all wearing matching t-shirts that read "Respect First" on the front and Ghost's Corner on the back. As the bell rang for the first round, Tyler moved differently than he had a year ago. His boxing was more technical, more measured, but also more confident. He had learned to find strength in discipline rather than dominance. The fight went the full 10 rounds. Tyler lost on a split decision, but he had never looked more victorious. As he embraced his opponent, showing the kind of sportsmanship that had been completely absent from his earlier persona, the arena erupted in appreciation. In his post-fight interview, dripping sweat but smiling genuinely, Tyler addressed the reporter. "A year ago, I thought being a champion meant never losing. Tonight, I learned that being a champion means how you handle both victory and defeat. My coach taught me that the real fight isn't against your opponent. It's against your own ego." Marcus watched from the corner, pride evident in his eyes. This wasn't the pride of a trainer whose fighter had won. This was the deeper satisfaction of a teacher whose student had learned the most important lesson of all, that true strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. As the arena emptied, Tyler approached Marcus with an envelope. "What's this?" Marcus asked. "The purse from tonight's fight," Tyler said. "I wanted to go to Ghost's Corner, to expand the program, to help more kids learn what you taught me." Marcus shook his head. "Tyler, you earned this. You took the punches, you did the work." "Mr. Williams," Tyler replied, using the respectful address that had become natural to him. "You taught me that what we earn isn't just about what we achieve. It's about what we contribute. This feels like the right contribution." As they walked out of the arena together, the former champion and the reformed young fighter, Marcus realized that his greatest victory hadn't come in any ring he'd ever fought in. It had come in a Miami warehouse with kids who needed to learn that respect was stronger than reputation, that character mattered more than credentials, and that true champions were made not in moments of triumph, but in moments of humility. The confrontation that had started as Tyler's attempt to humiliate a janitor had become something neither of them could have imagined, a masterclass in redemption, respect, and the transformative power of authentic human connection. Sometimes the most important fights happen when the cameras are off and the crowds have gone home. Sometimes victory looks like admitting you were wrong. And sometimes the greatest champions are the ones who teach others how to be champions of character first and everything else second. Marcus "Ghost" Williams had returned to the ring after all. Not as a fighter, but as something even more powerful, a builder of better people. 2 years later, Ghost's Corner had expanded to 3 locations across Florida. Marcus had been featured in Sports Illustrated, not for his fighting accomplishments, but for his work with at-risk youth. The article was titled "The Champion's Second Act: How Marcus Williams Found Victory in Defeat." Tyler had become a legitimate professional boxer, with a record of 8 wins and 2 losses. More importantly, he had become a role model for young athletes struggling with ego and entitlement. His autobiography, The Hurricane's Eye, Finding Calm in the Storm, had become a bestseller. Sophia had graduated law school and now ran a nonprofit that provided legal services to retired athletes while coordinating youth sports programs across the Southeast. But perhaps the most important legacy was the simplest. In a world increasingly divided by artificial barriers of class, race, and profession, 3 people had shown that respect was universal, that dignity belonged to everyone, and that true champions were measured not by their victories, but by their character. The janitor's last fight had been his greatest victory. Not because he had defeated an opponent, but because he had created something that would outlast any championship belt. A new generation that understood that real strength came from building others up. In the end, that was worth more than any title Marcus Williams had ever won. What did you think of the story? Share your thoughts in the comment below. I love to hear your stories.